Hello everyone and welcome to today's tutorial with Joanne Mulligan. Today I'm going to talk about thermal embossing and show you how to use a heat gun to get that nice embossed image. You need to buy a heat gun first. There's certain tools that you need to have. The number one thing is you have to have a heat gun. You cannot use a hairdryer. Hairdryer will just blow the powder all over the place. The heat gun just sends out heat. It doesn't blow any air out at all, a little bit, but not enough to make the powder blow all over the place. You need to have embossing powders. Today we're going to use gold, we're going to use clear, and we're going to use white. I'm going to show you 3 different styles of embossing. You also need to have an embossing buddy. This is to remove any static on the card or if you have fingerprints. If you don't remove those prior to stamping and putting your embossing powder, any oils or the static, little flakes of the embossing powder will stick to it. When you apply the heat, they'll be permanent on there and you'll have little speckles all over the place, which unless you want that look, you want to get rid of that. You also need to have a certain type of ink. You cannot use a classic ink pad. The ink dries too quickly for the powder to stick. You need to use either a craft pad or a Versamark pad. Both contain a thick, sticky ink that stays wet long enough for the powder to stick. Like I said again, you cannot use a classic ink. You need to use one of these 2 styles of ink or a pigment ink. Okay, let me show you different styles. We're going to start off using a piece of Whisper White cardstock. We're going to use the gold powder. First off, I'm going to take my embossing buddy and I'm going to go over the entire surface where I'm going to stamp my image. Like I said, you want to get rid of any fingerprints, oils, or static. I'm going to take my Versamark. This is a clear ink. It'll show up clear on here. You won't see it at first. You'll just see a little bit of shine. So when I apply the colored powders to it, you'll see the gold will stand out perfectly. So I'm going to take and ink up my stamp. You don't want to smash it in because this is a foam pad. You don't want to tap too hard, just like when using our classic pads, tippy taps. And you want to look at it and see if you have any ink that goes around the edges, which I have a little teeny tiny bit here. I just want to take a Q-tip and get rid of that. I don't want to have any ink on the edges here. So if I by chance happen to move my stamp in the least little bit, you don't want to have any of that around here because the embossing powder will stick to it. You just want to have it on the raised portions of your stamp. So I just want to make sure I get enough ink on there for good coverage. Look at it, look to see if there's shiny on here and make sure you don't have anything on the edges. Then I'm just going to take my stamp and stamp it right onto my cardstock. So you can't really see it right now, but you can see a little bit of a shine there. So what I'm going to do is take a piece of scrap paper, put it on my scrap paper here, and I'm just going to take my powder and open it up. I'm just going to sprinkle it right over the top, over that whole image. And I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to tap off that excess. I just do a little taps from behind just to make sure I get all that excess off. And see where it's stuck right nice to that ink? We're just going to set that aside for a moment and pour our embossing powder back into our jar. Close it up immediately so you don't spill. And there we go. Now if you happen to get a few little strays, you can always take a brush, a dry paintbrush, and you can go and flick off those little strays. Okay, now we're going to get to the heat part. You're going to want to turn your heat gun on. Close the little... And you want to hold it over the image. I usually just wave it around a little bit till it starts to get hot, and then I hold it in one spot. And you'll see it start to turn and get shiny. And as that happens, you start moving it around. See how it's getting shiny? You don't want to stay too long in one space, because if you do, the powder will sort of melt into the paper and you'll be left with a little like grease spot. So you want to go around the whole thing just to see. There we go. Put this little kickstand back down. And there you go. That is gold embossing powder on Whisper White cardstock. And see how pretty that is? Nice and shiny. Okay. Now we're going to use the craft pad on a piece of black. And we're going to use the white powder. I'm going to open up my craft pad. Once again, use my embossing buddy to go over the entire cardstock. And I'm just going to clean this real quick. Okay. Now we're going to tap into our white. You can see it picking up some white. Make sure we get nice ink coverage. Tap, tap, because again, this is a foam pad as well. Now we've got nice ink coverage. I'm looking to make sure I don't have any ink along the edges. And then I'm going to stamp it right onto my cardstock. And this one you'll be able to see. But now we're going to take our white powder. Use my scrap piece again. Move that out of the way. We're going to sprinkle that right over the top. And then we will, once again, tap it right off. Put it aside, pour back into the jar. And it's the same steps. We're going to take our heat gun. Now once you start using the heat gun, the tip will start to get warm, so be very careful so you don't burn yourself. And same steps. We're going to do the exact same thing. Hold it over it until the powder starts to melt. And then you'll see it start to get shiny. See how it's getting shiny? And we're just going to go right over the entire thing. You can also use Versamark. You don't have to use the white, but I just wanted to show you how the white craft pad worked. And there we go. There's our white snowflake. Now I'm going to show you a tone on tone, which we're going to use the Versamark for. I'm going to clean this real quick again. Okay. Now we're going to use our Versamark pad. And once again, we're going to tippy tippy tap. Make sure we get it all nice coating on there. We don't want to get it on the edges. Oop, I have a little bit right here. So I'm going to go in with my Q-tip and just remove that. Just in case the stamp rocks at all, you don't want to have that halo image. Make sure we have good coverage. Now we're going to stamp this right onto our Island Indigo. Now you can see it gives you a nice watermark effect. What I'm going to use now is my clear embossing powder. Let me get my paper back. Oops. The lid won't do it. I need the powder, don't I? And once again, sprinkle over the top. Tap off. I'm going to pour it back in. Close that up. And now we've got, it shows up white before you hit it with the heat gun, but it will turn clear. So once again, we're going to heat it up. And there we go. See how quickly that does? Now my heat gun's nice and hot. That's why it's not taking as long to do. And there you have a tone on tone using the clear embossing powder and a Versamark pad, which gives it a really nice effect. I've done that with several cards for backgrounds, and there are 3 different styles, 3 different types of embossing powder. And there you go. That's how you thermal emboss. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. For a list of the products used, please click the link in the video description. Be sure to visit my website, stamptiyouDrop.com, for more inspiration and videos. I can also be found on Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest. Thank you so much for watching, and happy stamping.